Hello, it's Miss Ottolini, and today we're going to be talking about dihybrid crosses. Up until this point, we've been conducting what are called monohybrid crosses, Punnett squares that show the inheritance of one trait at a time. Now we will conduct a dihybrid cross, a Punnett square that shows the inheritance of two traits at a time. Let's say we were looking at two traits, flower color and leaf color in plants. For flower color, purple flowers are going to be dominant over white flowers, so we'll use an uppercase P for purple flowers and a lowercase p for white flowers. For leaf color, green leaves are going to be dominant over yellow leaves, so we'll use an uppercase G for green leaves and a lowercase g for yellow leaves. Okay. Let's say we wanted to conduct a cross between two parents who have these genotypes. Big P, big G, little g, so that means they're heterozygous for both flower color and leaf color. We have to figure out what gametes we're going to be putting on the top and the side of our square, so we use something that you may have used in math before called the FOIL method. So if I look at one of my parents' genotypes, big P, big G, little g, my first gamete is going to be the first allele for each trait, so it's going to be the first P, big P, and the first G, big G. Next, for our second gamete, we're going to have the outer allele for each trait. So we're going to have the outer P, big P, and the outer G, little g. For our third gamete, we have the inner allele for each trait. So we have the inner P, little p, and the inner G, big G. For gamete 4, we're going to have the last allele for each trait. So we'll have the last P, little p, and the last G, little g. Since our two parents have the same genotypes, we're going to put those same 4 gametes on the top and the side of the square. Okay, so that's what I've done here. And I've set up my Punnett square so that I have 4 gametes on the top and 4 gametes on the left side, which means I'm going to have 16 potential offspring genotypes. Okay. So I'm going to show how I found my first offspring genotype with the intersection of this gamete up top with this gamete on the side. So I'll have big P, big G, little g. So that offspring would have purple flowers, which is dominant, and green leaves, which is also dominant. Notice that I'm putting both of my P's before both of my G's. So I'm going to keep the traits together. Okay, my next one, I'll take the intersection of this gamete with this gamete, and I'll get big P, big G, little g. Notice that I'm always putting a dominant allele, big G, before a recessive allele, little g. And again, this potential offspring is also going to have purple flowers and green leaves. Take a minute, pause the video, go ahead and fill in the rest of your potential offspring genotypes and come back to the video when you've done so. Right, now that you've paused the video and filled in your offspring genotypes, you should have genotypes that look like these. Please pause the video again and check to see that you have the correct offspring genotypes. Okay, now that you're back, we're going to see how we can make sense of this information. We are going to try to find the ratio of potential offspring phenotypes, that is, physical traits. So we have 4 possible phenotypes. We've got purple flowers, green leaves. We have purple flowers, yellow leaves. White flowers, green leaves. And white flowers, yellow leaves. So I'm going to use a symbol for each of those 4 phenotypes, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to code each of my offspring. Okay. So let's say I chose to use smiley faces for my purple flowers and green leaves, or dominant phenotype. So all of my offspring that have those 2 traits, purple flowers and green leaves, are going to receive a smiley face next to their genotype. Then for my offspring that have purple flowers and yellow leaves, so they'd be dominant and then recessive, I'm going to use a heart. So I've gone through and used a heart for all of those offspring. Then for my offspring that have white flowers and green leaves, so recessive dominant, I used a lightning bolt. And finally, for my offspring that has white flowers and yellow leaves, so recessive, I used a moon. Okay, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to count the number of offspring out of 16 that have each of these possible phenotypes. So it looks like my symbol for dominant was a smile. And if I go through and I count the frequency, it appears that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of my 16 offspring having a smiley face to indicate that they are dominant. Purple flowers, green leaves. Okay, then for my purple and yellow, I used a heart. So I'm going to go through and count the number of hearts, and it looks like I have 1, 2, and 3. So 3 out of my 16 offspring are dominant recessive. Then for white flowers and green leaves, I used a lightning bolt. And if I go through and count the number of lightning bolts, I have 1, 2, 3. So again, 3 out of 16. Okay, and finally, I used a moon, a little crescent moon, for my one individual that was recessive, white flowers and yellow leaves. So I only have 1 out of my 16 individuals showing both recessive traits. Now this ratio might seem a little random to you, but actually when Mendel did all of his experiments with pea plants, he found that whenever he used 2 parents that were both heterozygous for 2 traits, he ended up with this same ratio. He ended up with 9 pea plants showing both dominant traits, 3 pea plants showing the first trait dominant, the second trait recessive, 3 pea plants showing the first trait recessive and the second trait dominant, and only 1 that showed both recessive traits. Okay, I hope this was helpful and gave you a little more information about dihybrid crosses. Thank you.